Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Sherry. This is Gardening in the North, and today we're going to be making cowboy candy from jalapenos from the garden. So if you have a lot of jalapenos that you don't know what to do with, stick around. This is probably one of my favorite recipes. I use cowboy candy, I'm gonna say, on a weekly basis. I love mixing this with Greek yogurt and a little bit of powdered ranch dressing. I mix it all up and we use it on everything. If we're making wraps, burgers, nacho chips, it is added to everything, to the point of just making a regular chicken dinner and I will put a scoop of the mixture onto my plate and dunk my chicken in it. So stick around, you are going to love this recipe. While I was chopping up and putting all of my jalapenos through the food processor, I put my jars into the canner. I've had them boiling for about 15 to 20 minutes. I just turned it off. I'm gonna let them stay in there until I'm ready to actually can them. You really wanna make sure that you're adding hot liquid to hot jars in order for them not to crack on you. That is the last thing you want. You spend so much time out in your garden trying to grow as much as you can, then you spend time harvesting it and then processing it. The last thing you want is to have one of your jars crack during the hot water bath process to ruin all of that hard work. So I wanted to get some of my ingredients ready to go so that I could start putting it into the pot for the sugary syrup portion of the recipe. Realized that I didn't have any chili powder, so I just made a little bit of my own here. I just looked online and I had all of the other ingredients to make it. And I thought, why not just make my own rather than foregoing the chili powder spice in the recipe. I thought, we'll just make it. First ingredient is your vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar today, but you can use white vinegar if you don't have apple cider vinegar. So we are doing 3 cups. Just enough in this one. Okay. So the next thing is 4 cups of sugar. I know it sounds like a lot, but you are not spooning the cowboy candy and eating a whole jar of it. You're taking, so for the recipe that I like to use with the Greek yogurt, I'll take one of the small, I want to say there's maybe a cup. It's one of the smaller yogurt containers, and I'll take 3/4 of that, mix it with just a tablespoon of the cowboy candy, mix all that up. So in that whole container, you're using 1 tablespoon, sometimes less, depending on how hot your cowboy candy is. So we're gonna add in 4 cups of sugar. Okay, I'm just gonna put that there. The next thing is 2 teaspoons of turmeric. Okay. Next thing is 2 tablespoons of, 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, and this is homemade garlic powder. It smells so good. Okay, so we're doing 2 tablespoons of this. Next thing is 1 tablespoon of the chili powder. Okay, we need 2 teaspoons of mustard seed. can add in chopped garlic. I'm not adding in chopped garlic because I did not do slices of jalapenos. I did chopped up jalapenos, and so I don't want to have chopped up garlic in this as well, just my preference. And the reason that I like chopped better than sliced is because it's more versatile for me. I can add it to many things, whereas, and then you're only getting a small taste of the heat. Whereas when you're using slices, it's really hard not to get a lot of heat all at once. So I prefer using the chopped. So the last ingredient is salt. It calls for 2 teaspoons. I'm only gonna do 1 and a bit. And the reason for that is when I made the homemade chili powder, the only ingredient that I had to kind of modify a bit was the onion powder. I only had onion salt. So I'm just gonna go a little light on the actual salt because I've already put some salt into this. Okay, so the next part of it is mixing it and allowing the sugar to dissolve in the liquid. All the sugar is now dissolved and it's starting to do a light boil. Once it gets to a hard boil, I'm going to turn the heat down and let it simmer for about 5 minutes. I'm then gonna raise the heat up a little bit. I'm gonna add in my jalapenos and let that boil for a good 4 minutes. While we're waiting for this to simmer for the 5 minutes, I thought we would take a quick minute to talk about jar size. So I'm using the 1/2 pint wide mouth jars. The reason that I really like these jars for this particular recipe is because if you're gonna share it with anybody, they may not go through this jar as quickly as somebody else. And so you don't wanna give them a full pint-sized jar that might go to waste once it's in the fridge. I also really like the wide mouth. It's easy to get my tablespoon or my teaspoon into it, scoop out what I need, and then seal it back up and put it back in the fridge. Okay, we're ready to add in all of our chopped up jalapenos. I do want to mention that I have tried this recipe using red and green jalapenos, and I wasn't a big fan of it. And the reason for it is the color of the final product. This is such a vibrant green color. And when you add in red jalapenos to it, the final product is more of a greenish brown color, and it's just not as pretty. So going forward, I'm always going to use the nice, pretty green ones. So we're just gonna put this in to the simmering sugar brine. Again, you also want to make sure you wear gloves when you're chopping everything up because, trust me, from experience, you don't want your hands being on fire for the next 5 days. One of the other things that I added into this that I had forgotten to mention was celery seed. So I added in a 1/2 teaspoon of celery seed to this sugar brine that I made. I also want to mention that this is 4.5 pounds of chopped up jalapenos. The recipe calls for 3 pounds, but from my experience in making this recipe, I always have so much brine left over. I just thought I wasn't going to double the brine, even though I had extra jalapenos. So we're just gonna wait until this gets to a boil, and then we're gonna let it boil for 4 minutes. Okay, so the next step is using a ladle that has the holes in it to scoop out all of your jalapenos into your jars. The reason you want to use a spoon that has the holes in it is because you don't want the liquid yet. You're gonna add that after you filled your jars up. So let's see here. Now, if you get some of the liquid in there, it doesn't matter, but you just don't want to be scooping out the liquid and your jalapenos. I have all my jars filled. I'm now going to add some of the leftover sugar brine to each jar, bringing it up to about a 1/4 inch from the top, just over a 1/4 inch from the top. I like to do is take a little bit of vinegar on a paper towel, and I just go around each jar, making sure that I clean off any of that sugary syrup brine, any of the jalapenos that might be on there. I just want to make sure that once I put my lids on and I put them in the hot water bath, that the seal is going to be good. Okay, the next step is adding on your lids and your rings. Now, you don't need to soak or heat up your rings in hot water anymore, but I do it because I've always done it like that, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable doing it. So once you put your lid on, you want to make sure that you are tightening up the ring finger tight. You don't want it too loose so that it opens up, but you also want to make sure that it's tight enough to keep everything in. So they say finger tight. Next step is putting your jars into the hot water. So once you have all of your jars in your hot water, you want to make sure there's at least an inch of hot water above your jars. You're then going to bring it to a full boil for 15 minutes. At the end of that 15 minutes, you're going to turn the heat off, and you're going to remove the lid and wait 5 minutes and then take your jars out. At that point, you should hear that beautiful popping music sound. Look at how beautiful that is. So I'm gonna leave these on my counter for 24 hours. I'm also going to be removing the rings, and in 24 hours I'll be putting them into my pantry after I do the seal test. And what that is you're basically going to pick the jar up holding the lid, making sure that that lid is secure before you put it into your pantry. So one other thing that I wanted to mention is I said that you were gonna have to hot water bath these for 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes for pint-sized jars. These are half pint size. So whatever jar size you're using, just change that accordingly and enjoy. Thanks for spending time with me.